Good morning, everybody. It's it's the end of August. My God, you haven't got much left of this year. Tell you what, it's done. It is done. This morning we are joined by Lebang. There she is. Look at this. Let's say
Morning,
hi,
morning,
Lebang.
morning.
There she is. There she is. And we are joined by Michael Flax. Hello, Flax. How are you?
Good morning. Oh, it's a good day to have a great day, I must say.
What?
Free.
Wow.
It's a good day to have a great day.
Oh,
Love
hang
that
on,
energy.
hang on, Flax.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with your sound. Just sudden, it
Oh, no.
sounded like you were speeding up for a second there, like you were talking
Do I
at
need to come
double
back in?
speed. It's so weird.
It did it.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I think just go out and come
Good now?
back in. No, it's still doing it. So go out and
Maybe
come
this
back
is
in.
how he speaks. What if this is just actually like the speed at which he communicates? It's a good to everything. We just need to accommodate people, okay?
So I saw you were in Sun City over the weekend.
I was, yes. In fact, initially when I'd planned the trip, my best friend and I had met in Sun City when we were 9 years old, right? So we were like, oh, this will be nice, reunion vibes. We're gonna, be in the place where we met, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was really not about that at all. We just ended up just having a really wild time. Judging the summer awards, which were pretty bland as well. And most importantly, I just learned that I don't need to be a part of everything. Like sometimes you just throw the towel in on some activities and just let the kids do it. Let them do the running around and all of that stuff. I just think it's time for me to accept that I'm old.
Whoa. I mean, like, this is quite a big deal. So you were a judge at the Summers, even though nobody cares.
100%.
Oh, it's Sun City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not being horrible about this, but like I really don't know what's going on in music. So I'm in no position to be saying no one cares, but clearly no one cared because I didn't see any noise about it on social media. It's like no one, like 5, even 10 years ago, definitely 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, it was such a big deal. It was really huge. It was like the most, it was the greatest honor. They used to have people flying in from all over the place. They had performances that were amazing. There were artists that everybody would have recognized. Like, what do you think has happened to music besides the obvious that now people don't sell music?
Yeah, it was very bad. You are spot on. You are spot on about everything you've just said. People just don't care anymore. But most importantly, even the organizers themselves don't care anymore. Half of the guests weren't even there. Things were just badly organized. I felt like I was in a movie. I referred to it as the Fyre Festival. If you guys remember the Fyre Festival,
yes.
it was
Oh my God.
bad. Like you get there, you don't know what's going on. People don't know where their rooms are. We don't know who to talk to. When we ask who we talk to, they don't want to tell us who to talk to. It was just a long hurry up and wait. And then after you wait, you eventually like settle in. But it's just still chaotic because that energy is already in the air. And it was very sad. And it's sad to see them squander something that should be really, entertaining. Something, as you're saying, you're honoring musicians and what they do for entertainment in South Africa. But it just felt like a bit of a Popeye show, to be honest. I was like, I could have watched this at home.
And you were a judge. I mean, like you were there to judge. So I mean, if they treated you like, we don't know which room you're in, blah blah blah, then what chance is there for anyone who's attending as a guest? I don't think anyone can just go and enjoy this show the way it was meant to be enjoyed. It's like, look,
what were the goodie bags like?
Goodie bags?
Back in the day, they were extreme. Oh, budgets
there was
that low.
Absolutely no goodie bags. There was nothing. Like I saw so many celebrities stranded. Like actual celebrities, like the few we have in this country, were all just like, we don't know what's happening. I was like, ooh, I should have just stayed home. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
I went to the Summers once. I don't know how many years ago. It must be 12, 10, 8, somewhere around there. Somewhere between 12 and 8 years ago. We got goodie bags. We got these suitcases, like the kind of suitcase that you take to the airport for a weekend away. And it was full of stuff. Like
no way.
Ray-Ban sunglasses, like new sneakers, like amazing stuff. It was really, really cool.
Wow.
I opened it because normally you go to these things. I don't care about goodie bags, but this was awesome. It was probably the best goodie bag I've ever got in South Africa for anything. And I thought, wow, these guys are really on top of things. But I think that was the year. I'm pretty sure it was the year that Randall took over and ran the Psalmers, because he's such a stickler, and he's now in charge. He's now the CEO of Prime Media Broadcasting, and he just didn't tolerate any like slack, lazy, useless people. And he was like, no, this is going to be good, or else we're not going to do it properly. And he just kicked backside and and made sure he cracked the whip, and people were doing their thing. But I'm just surprised, and at the same time I'm not, because if you think about it, even the Oscars, the Grammys, I mean, they had the MTV VMAs, right? I saw this only because Jen Sue had it on her social media, and they showed like, so I saw like they were doing it in some nondescript building, because I saw Lizzo like walking in this really big billowing dress, and Jen's like saying, "Hey Lizzo, you look so great," blah blah blah. And then but it looks like she's just walking into a building for a meeting, because there's no like red carpet or anything. And this is the MTV VMAs, which again, no one's watching anymore. Right? So it's not just us Summers.
But still, like, you guys can fall off. Don't fall off this hard. It's like they've just gone, and they just don't care to.
I think people are over award ceremonies. I mean, like even the Oscars. Did you watch the Oscars this year? I didn't. Did you watch it, Flax?
No, I didn't even know it was done.
No, it's just not. It's not a priority for people anymore.
I don't have DSTV or any of those things to watch it on.
Flax, I don't know what's going on with your sound. It started fine, and now it's like it's like this weird thing that's happening. It might just be that. Get rid of that. Just try and reset maybe it's your mic. Just go off your headphones and Simpiwe, can you help?
Speaking in like super spot.
Am I better?
That's better.
Maybe, it might be.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. I'll clap myself.
Okay, so you were saying something about the Oscars. We couldn't hear you because you were like a chipmunk.
No, I don't even have DSTV to watch this stuff. I don't even know where they broadcast it.
Yeah.
So
no, I don't.
When it comes to Oscars and all that stuff, I just hear the gossip. If someone did something weird, I remember that moment. Do you remember the moment with Eminem where like he sat on like someone's face, or a bodyguard sat on someone's face? That was the last time I ever watched the Oscars or MTV or something. It was when Eminem was still like the hottest rapper.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. That was years ago.
I mean, Ryan even says in the comments here, like, I don't know one musician who won any award at the Summers this year. Also, all invites were to the local TikTokers who have no relation to the music industry.
100%. Like, who are these people? Like, everybody here is 18 years old. You just realize that you're in the wrong place. Like, you're not the target market anymore.
You know what it also...
It's like people got...
you know what it also comes down to is, like, unfortunately, these days, everyone thinks they're a celebrity. and anyone can be because of social media, which is fine. I mean, I'm not against that at all. I think it's great if it's an open business where anybody can become famous for doing like dance videos or whatever else the hell they do. But the problem is because they're only in it for themselves. My big problem with that is that they don't actually take even a second to celebrate anyone else. So it's me all the time. So nobody really gives a damn about the musician, if that's what they're there for, or the actor, if that's what they're there for, or this one, if that's what they're there for. Before it was a big deal because it was hard and it was rare to be a celebrity. Like celebrities were,
of course,
people, you didn't just encounter these people every time you opened your phone. Now you probably see more celebrities than you see friends, because maybe you see your friends on the weekend, and celebrities, you're looking at this thing every day and you're seeing people every day. So it's become the value of celebrities dropped, and the celebrities themselves, celebrities in inverted commas, social media ones, don't give a damn about anyone but themselves. They're only in it for themselves. So I would imagine, content creator, influencer type celebrities going to the Summers or whatever else it is, and then standing around making their own content rather than being part of an event. So
that's so
true.
You know?
We just have too much access to these people's lives. We know too much. Like back in the day, to become a famous individual, number one, you had to have a lot of talent. You had to work your ass off to be, visible. Now it's almost too easy to be visible. So if everybody has access to that one thing, then anybody can tell themselves that, hey, I must be on the same level as these celebrities because here we are on the same platforms, all pretending to have a good life. We're all faking it, basically. So definitely the quality of people in some of these positions has just dropped way too much. And it's taken the joy out of certain events, activities, and just certain situations. Like the joy is just gone because now it's like, oh, you can see exactly what this is.
I totally agree with you, but not just the joy. They've also taken out the shine, the showbiz, the real like sparkle. The fact is, when and if you saw celebrities and you didn't see them every day on your phone, they were always looking magnificent. They were always it was poised, it was positioned, it was part of a PR idea. It wasn't like you could just access me anytime you want, like you just phone a friend of yours or whatever. It used to be something that was rare. And as you say, Lebang, these people were talented and they worked really hard. They weren't just attention seeking 24/7. And I know we sound a little bit like a stuck record about this, but it saddens me that, there aren't any real superstars left in South Africa. I think the last one who we can say we honestly had, who was a massive superstar, is like Desmond Tutu. Okay, and after that, because he was a star, but he's certainly a Hugh Masekela, but that's now a while ago, right? And I don't think those people exist anymore. I don't think they're around. I think they're done. I think now it's like, okay, everybody, let's have a big bun fight to see who the next big celebrity is. And it's only your celebrity's only going to last like 10 minutes. So get into it. I mean, I look at
Do you not think that the like younger generation, the new generation, has a different concept on what a celebrity is? To them, a celebrity is someone with a mass following, not with a talent.
They do.
100%. But that's a part of the problem. I'm saying that's literally a part of the problem.
But Flax, why would I care how many people are following you? Or why would I care? Like, if I'm interested in someone, it's not a draw card to me, and I'm not being like just old and boring here. But like, why would I give a shit how many people are following you? Like, what do you offer me as a viewer, as a listener, as audience? What are you offering me? Because I'm not there just to see how many other people follow you. Why would I care about that?
It's like psychology at the end of the day. If you're walking through a shopping center and you see a shop with a whole bunch of people waiting to get in, you think, oh my God, this is the new cool shop. I want to get in. You get in line and you can get in there. It's the worst shop ever. But because everyone else thinks they're cool, hence the following, and they have, and you can buy your followers nowadays. We lost talent, and the talent that we did have here has either caught a plane out or passed on.
Sadly, I think you're right. I think that's exactly right. I don't get excited about celebrities like I used to, and it was a big deal. I also remember like TV, even people who used to present on TV. They were just there between shows on TV, right? Do you remember those people? They were like a big deal. When you saw them, it was like, wow, there's someone properly
You get starstruck.
Yeah, sure.
You literally still got starstruck back then. Like, can I please have a picture? I think the only person that I saw this weekend that got me like that was Makazi. And Makazi's one of like the biggest performers in the country. But she was just like so chill, humble, just doing her things. Like, she's one of the last few of those kinds of people. Because like she's also, she's a different breed. But still, that's not the point. The point is, there's just repercussions to
I'm embarrassed to know I don't even know who it is.
Also don't know.
You don't know her. Oh, guys, it's bad. Just know that it's bad. But you know what? Another layer of this is brands approach people with lots of followers, right? For collaborations and blah, blah, blah. So people that have lots of followers end up feeling more important than they really are. They don't really influence anyone, let's be honest. They don't do any influencing. But the brands and the companies make them feel so important that they start to believe that they are this important. And now we're dealing with just a bunch of hotheads who all have like 60 million followers trying to convince everybody to eat chocolates, whereas they don't even eat chocolates themselves. So when you engage with them on a personal level, you're like, I thought you were actually cool, but you're not as cool. It's just the numbers, and it's very sad. And the repercussions of that are even worse. So we'll just see how it goes. It's just sad.
Well, here's Tracy. So Tracy takes pictures of people, and she's a photographer. I once did photos for a proper celebrity, 500,000 followers, a big deal. She was amazed that I didn't get work from collabing with celebs. She admitted to me that she cannot afford the lifestyle that she portrays.
Oh, shoot.
Yep.
You don't live a life like that where you're literally just renting a jet for the runway and taking a photo, and that blows your budget for the month.
What's going on with you two today? I'm sorry, Flaxy and Lebang. I like you. You guys are both. There's something wrong with your connections in both cases. Why don't you both just leave and come back in? Because I don't know what the hell's happening.
Okay, let's try it.
There's this clicking on your microphones. There's like a whole lot of shit going down. Very annoying. Trying to get this sound right. I don't know what the hell the problem is. Anyway, so a lot of people saying here, yeah, but Gareth, we were young and impressionable, and that's who present celebrities are aiming at. That's true. I think that's absolutely true. But, at the same time, you can look objectively at things like the ratings on the Oscars. The ratings being, and maybe it's because there's also so much more to watch now, that why would you watch the stupid Oscar ceremony, right? I mean, now you could watch a whole series on Netflix. Why would you want to watch some boring ceremony in LA? That makes sense to me, but objectively, the ratings on all of these awards shows have gone down the toilet. So it's interesting to me. It's bizarre that, that humans we've changed our whole way of like absorbing content, who we listen to, who we're interested in, all of that stuff. Anyway, so it feels this is back to the celebrity that Tracy took pictures of. She feels shit for putting this fake lifestyle out there, but it is her bread and butter. Brands literally throw their money and brands at her. See, that's also what happens when money gets into any equation. It tends to just cheapen everything, because brands will throw money at people, and then they'll want associations, but maybe those people are just not, their heart's not in it, and then it's a fake thing. So in that case, who do we blame? Do we blame the brands? Do we blame the celebrities? Do we blame capitalism? Who do you blame?
No, in this case, it's her. If this is her bread and butter and she can't even afford the knife to spread the butter, cancel it. Find something else you're good at. You're just wasting your money, and sooner or later you're going to get old and wrinkly, and no one's going to care about your Instagram pictures, and then you're going to be destitute with no money, and it's going to be a terrible life. Get out of it now. Everyone thinks that they want validation from becoming a celebrity. Let me tell you, the cool kids don't care. That's it. The cool kids don't care if they're a celebrity or not.
That's true.
Stop trying to impress people.
Aren't you turning 30 in a couple of days' time?
Literally, not next week, the week after. I'm 30 years old, and I went and got all my gray hairs cut out yesterday. I did this thing called a skin fade. You can't see gray hairs, just skin now, pure skin. Soon I'm going to just shave it off, all bald.
Oh, Jesus, Flax. I remember you came to work for us. You were 21 years old or something.
Oh, I was living my best life. I was like drinking tequila off tables with celebrities. I was jawling. I had a good run, a good innings, and now I'm hitting 30.
It happens quickly, yeah. Sure, it really happens quickly. I mean,
checkpoint.
Rena, my business partner, always says time is a complete illusion. Like you don't realize that it's all. We try to measure it with watches and clocks, and we try to see what's going on with time, and we try to plan our day, and we've got schedules, and we've got diaries, and we've got calendars, and none of that stuff actually matters, because if you're not paying attention, it goes by like that. I was saying to someone just the other day that there are a lot of people who live in the past, and I'm one of those people who loves the past. It's a huge part of what I think the human story is all about, and your own personal story, your past. There are lots of people who carry a lot of baggage from their past and trauma and all that kind of thing. And then there are people who carry their memories and their identity as part of who they were in the past, and that's hugely important to them. Then obviously you get the present, which we'll get back to in a second, ironically. And then the future, where most people are trapped. Most people are trapped, like they're trapped in what tomorrow's going to bring and where they're going. And they're ambitious, and they've got goals, and all of that's terrific. But to get back to the middle one, when you live in the present, the only truly happy people I've ever met are the ones who are living in the present. They're not that concerned about how quickly things are moving and how much they still have to do, or what happened to them yesterday, what issues they've got with this person from a week ago. The really happy people are the ones who are living right now. So the ones who are where they are right now and wouldn't want to be anywhere else. In other words, they don't have FOMO.
So true.
Yeah,
Look into the future.
we dip in and out, eh? We don't really have just one
No, of course.
that we live in.
No.
There's times when you think about the past, there's times when you think about the future. But you're definitely right. I think the people that are stopping to be in the moment and are fully inside where they are and aren't going to stop to take a picture and share that picture right now on Instagram, and people that even forget to capture moments because the moment was when they were right there at that time and that was enough for them, are generally like the most chilled people.
Yeah.
They like not even concerned about what we're going to eat tomorrow, what we're going to do tomorrow. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But, you know, you just need to pick your lane and decide where you're going to be.
What are you doing for your birthday? Speaking of living in the future, Flax.
So I try to avoid it at all costs. Friends wanted to have a birthday party. I'm like, I don't want a birthday party. I'm even disappearing to Cape Town for it. I'm like, no one can throw me a surprise birthday party if I'm in Cape Town. Now all the boys are like, we're flying down to Cape Town, and there's this awesome place in Cape Town I found. No one knows about it. It's in Sea Point. It's a club called LA Lounge. It is the most gangster place I've ever been to. And I love gangster music. I literally, I put on a concert there. I rapped. It was like a Drake appreciation night. Place me in there any day. Like, I wish I went to school there. I had the fattest jaw ever. So I'm hoping to get a table there, and the boys will fly in for the weekend, and we'll just literally just celebrate that one night and then wake up the next day into a minute past 30 and midlife crisis too. So very exciting times ahead, eh?
Midlife crisis?
No, come on, no midlife crisis. You must be mad.
You're not even midlife yet, let's say.
Yeah, I actually can't complain. Everything's actually going right in my life at this point. I got health, wealth, and happiness, and I actually can't complain. I mean, I woke up this morning at 4:30 excited for the day, and I was like, I'm not going back to sleep. This is an epic day already.
Love that. Yeah, and 30 is still so young and fresh, dude. Like, on paper, it looks like it's a big number, and that, oh my word, so much is going to change. Now I need to mature. Dude, you are still very, very young. Take it from me. I literally turned 30 like maybe 2 years ago, but I don't feel like, there's this big, massive change I need to make. If you just continue to be yourself and just live out your best life, dude, everything will feel like you're just flowing. You're just going with the ages. You shouldn't feel like it's a big number. There's still a lot that you're going to learn about yourself. There's still things you're going to do that are going to surprise you about yourself, but just be your true self at all times, and you're going to have a lack of joy. I mean, go to those gangster clubs. Go to these little gangster clubs and do your performances, baby.
You see, this is what I was saying about the present and the future and the past, is that there are three different versions of you competing for attention at any given time. And the one who should get the most attention is the present one. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being excited about something that's coming. So like, for example, your birthday is coming up. Maybe you're really excited to see friends or go to this place in Cape Town or do something fun. So you've got to be living a little bit in the future. So it gives you something to look forward to, right? And that's hugely important. Something to aim at in the future. And the past thing is also part of the story. You can't ignore you can't just cut the past loose and pretend it's not there. You have certain things that you carry forward from that are important to you, and that are important to everyone around you as well. So don't throw that away. But 90% of it, okay, let's say 80% of it needs to be right now. It's like, you know what? I'm enjoying this now. So when you're sitting with somebody and you think, I'd rather be with someone else, a lot of people who are in, long-term relationships feel that way sometimes. And don't beat yourself up about it. We all do. If you're with someone and you're like, oh, I'd rather be with these people, or I'd rather be with that person, or I'd rather be doing this. Don't beat yourself up about it, but instead look them in the eye and decide that that moment that you've got with them is worth mining. It's like a rich vein of gold. So I mean, often I'll get on this show and I'll be like, oh, it's so early, oh, I don't feel like doing this. And then someone will come on, a guest or a co-host or somebody. I'll have the most incredible conversation with them. And I'll think afterwards, it wasn't just the show, it was actually the most amazing opportunity to connect with this person, to learn something about them, to learn something about the world, learn something about myself. You know, we could all, like, basically this morning, none of us needed to go to the Psalmers this weekend. You went for us, Lebang, and you told us enough to make it, you know, interesting for us to discuss. And we didn't have to be there like you were. And similarly, you know, Flax is going to this Gangsta club, and I think it's going to be amazing. There's not a single part of me that wishes I was there, but I'm really like kind of pleased that we had the conversation about it, because now at least, you know, if I ever feel the need to go to some club and do like a Drake appreciation thing, I'll know who to call. I'll call up Michael Flax and he'll help us to figure it out, right?
You'll love it. You'll never leave. You'll set up studio there. It's the greatest place there. A little touch of heaven in Sea Point.
Well, Simon says 50-year-old rolls eyes. Yeah, don't get too miserable and old, Simon. So you got to also enjoy where you're at the moment. Paul says, lol, 30, you're still a baby. Long way to go. Try 60 on for size.
Sure.
Yeah. You see, this is what I love. We've got people who are listening to us this morning who are 22, 23. We got people who are listening to us this morning who are 68. And it's terrific. You know, I got a letter. Oh, I didn't tell you guys this. I got a handwritten letter from a lady in Port Elizabeth who listens to us. And she sent me a book as a gift. But it was a handwritten letter on, like, you know, that old writing paper where people used to have, they had their own writing paper, and she'd written this handwritten note. Not parchment. She's not from ancient Egypt. And I got this really cool letter from this woman, and I thought, that's so damned awesome. I mean, obviously, I love, you know, a comment on Instagram or an email if someone sends an email about the show and all of that stuff. Love it. But there's something so special about the fact that we can have those things, and I can get a handwritten letter from this lady in PE who's old. She's you know, she's definitely no spring chicken, and it's just great to get all of that stuff in, you know, in the world of feedback. You're getting it from so many different places. It's lovely.
Yeah, I mean, handwritten. Like, when last did you get anything handwritten? Like an actual letter that you can touch with your own hands. You know, that's when you like appreciate it a little bit more, because it's not as easy as just sort of like sitting there typing, right? You actually gave it thought and you said, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to take this pen, I'm going to write my thoughts on this paper, I'm going to freaking send it down to Johannesburg and make sure Gareth Cliff gets it. I mean, you can almost frame it at this stage. It just feels nice. I mean, these kids have no freaking cooking clue what that's like. You know, they just like typing every day of their lives. Like, my kids have no clear idea what a CD is. I just said, do you know what this is? And he was just like, huh? And I was like, yo, wait. Yeah.
My friends and I went on a mission the other day to try and find a CD, just any CD, just to find a CD. Don't know where they sell it. Literally have no idea.
No, I don't know where anybody's selling CDs anymore. But I actually said to a friend of mine, he's just built, he hasn't built, he's just bought a new apartment, right? So in his new apartment, he's actually got a whole setup, like a very old school, like CD setup. And he said to me, he's now going to go and try and like source CDs. So I'm like, I'll bring you a whole bunch, because what am I going to do with them? I don't even have a thing to play CDs from. Not even my laptop has like a CD drive in it. So I don't, I mean, if I wanted to get the music off of there, I wouldn't know how to. But just to quickly go back to the thing about the letter, and then we've got to get to some headlines. What is so amazing about a letter is, as you say, Lebang, you have to think about it. You have to get the paper. You have to get a pen. You have to write nicely. I mean, if it has to be legible, right? So you actually put some craft and some effort into the presentation of the thing. And because you don't want a letter with things scratched out, you have to think about it like you wouldn't think about an email. With an email, you type something and then you edit it afterwards. You can delete a word, you can change a sentence, you can put a space in or whatever. It's easy to do that on a computer. But if you're writing a letter, you have to think about it beforehand. You have to be like, all right, paragraph, let me put the name up here, let me write this many words here, change that word. Before you write it, you have to get it right. So sometimes you do a draft and then you do a final version. So already people have put more effort into a page of writing than they do into 10 pages of typing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's educating a little bit of yourself, right? When you're writing that letter, it's a piece of yourself that you are like presenting to whoever you're writing this for.
Correct.
And that's what makes it special. It's a part of you. It's like art. Sure, it's just writing on paper, but like now I can truly say it's a form of yourself. We're getting a piece of you. You have to think about it, you know?
Definitely. And the other thing about it is when you receive it, you're not just going to read it and throw it away like you delete an email.
Nope.
Sorry, Flax, you were saying?
When last did you guys hold a pen? I literally, like, it might be a week that I haven't held a pen.
No, I've got pens all over.
Just notes are typed.
Yeah, I've got pens everywhere. Literally.
Don't know what kind of pen you got.
I got a pen
I've got
and paper.
sticky notes everywhere.
Everywhere. You know, Flax, you've sat in meeting with me, so have you, Lebang. I keep notebooks of every meeting I've been in. I write the names of the people in the meeting, I write the date, and then I write down some general notes about the things that we're discussing, especially stuff that has to be done or whatever. And I've now got I've got basically one of these books for every year that we've done Cliff Central. So I can actually go back now and see who I met with on any given day. And it's bloody amazing. Like I found the other day, I found notes.
So cool.
I found notes from a meeting that we had in probably our first or second year. And there was a whole bunch of people. It was when we were designing our app. And it was these people from all over the world. You know, there were people from Holland who'd come out to help us do it. And there were people from Apple. And it was amazing. And I looked back and thought, wow, this is pretty damn cool. You know, and I've got a record of it. So it isn't just gone. I mean, for all I know, those people have forgotten meeting with me. But when I found my notes, I was like, damn, this is cool.
Yeah. It's like a little time machine. You can literally go back to any time when you met someone for the first time. And also, what do you remember about those meetings? Do you remember how that person actually made you feel? You don't really remember what you spoke about. You don't remember who was wearing, and none of that mattered. It was just the energies, you know what I mean? So you can look back on that, like your own little personal, handwritten Instagram, Gareth.
Well, it's not just me. Sanele also says, I still write in a journal and a notebook, even though my handwriting is terrible. Well, listen, I'm the first to admit my handwriting used to be a whole lot better than it is now. It's absolutely terrible. All right. Let's just look at a couple of headlines, guys. Otherwise, we get carried away here and we forget that there are actual important things going on. So Instagram says that apparently your precise location is never actually shared. This is what they're saying. This is from the BBC this morning. So Instagram says viral claims suggesting location tags on content can reveal exact locations are false. Viral posts and videos have a precise location toggle in the app location settings on iOS and Android devices, and they could share your exact location with other Instagram users. Some viral posts suggest this is the result of an Instagram or iOS update, but they've said this is not the case, and the feature does not share location with other users. Well, again, shouldn't you take some responsibility here? You guys tell me. I mean, when I post something on Instagram, if it's at the office or if it's in a public place or if it's somewhere where I want people to have a precise location, sure, I'll drop it. But the rest of the time, no. You know, if I'm at a private birthday party or I'm at a friend's house or I'm at my own house, I'm not going to drop a precise location when I put up content. Why would I?
I go the fun route and I'll make up my own locations, like you tag it as heaven or Thunderbell Park or just some random things.
Wow, from heaven to Thunderbell Park.
To Thunderbell Park. Like worlds apart.
Do that. Tag random places. Be like in Cape Town on Clifton, but tag it as like the Vole or somewhere.
No, I do sometimes.
Everyone.
Yeah, no, I do. What do you do, Lebang? Do you give people your exact locations, like even over this weekend?
Like, I don't think I do. Like, I'm not interested in people knowing exactly where I am. I think it's a little bit creepy. If it's like for a specific reason and I want people to know, then I'll do it. But I don't even know where the setting even really is on my Instagram. Right. Like, isn't that scary? The thought of it.
For interest's sake, they've actually shared a screen, which I'll put up now so that you can see it as well, because actually they have just done an update and it might be worth just checking this out. So go onto your phone quickly. I'll put the screen up here so you can see what it is. And then they've got a new button that says precise location. Okay, so you will see. And obviously it's useful. Sometimes it's useful to have a precise location, but often not. So if you look at your iOS screen, you obviously go to location, which is there on the settings. You know what we're talking about here? Privacy, location services. And then what you do is in Instagram on those location services, you'll see it says precise location. Do you see that? There's a new tab.
Yes.
So if you've updated, you'll see it's right at the bottom of the location screen.
Mine is on.
Yeah, you switch that off if you want it off. So just do that.
You see, this is how they get you. This is exactly how they get you. With these funny little things. And you're like, oh, new update. That's cool. Ganti, they're just doing too much. You're giving them too much of yourself, too much information about who you are. And it's just, you have to find a way to balance that quickly.
So apparently when you turn that off, according to your phone, apps can only determine your approximate location. See, Instagram is not one of those you need a precise location for. Uber, you want a precise location. If you need for emergencies, if someone's trying to find you, you want the precise location, but not for Instagram. And I would go into all social media. Like I can see some of the others in here. You might want to take off precise location as well. So now you know. There you go. We try to be useful on the show. See?
I remember watching YouTube videos where these guys would go, American guys would go like to Venice Beach, and they would go onto Instagram and go recently tagged in these places. They would find the person and go up to the person after like going through their news feed and everything and act like they knew the person and was like, oh, how was Barbados last week? Because they saw it on their page. And literally it was like a social experiment that proved that you can literally find a person and know their entire life just from Instagram, which is scary.
That's quite scary and not safe at all. You know too much about my life. Like that's way too much information for anybody to have access to.
Totally freaked me out. All right, then they've found a bottle of KWV port that is 100 years old, and it has sparked a bidding war. It's an auction. Okay, so it's KWV Jubilee port from 1929. And you know how we've done Collectomania on the show, so we're interested in collecting crazy things. Strauss & Company's Cape Heritage Wine Auction, featuring almost 100 lots, is expected to close. In fact, it would have closed at 1900 hours on Monday this week. The most valuable lot on offer, according to the auctioneer's estimates, include the Sadie family's O Wingerd Reeks 2009 collection. A single bottle, this is amazing, a single bottle of this stuff is worth, well, let me put a picture of it up as well so you can actually have a look at this quickly. And you tell me if you think, it doesn't look like it. It looks almost like an old, like something that's been left at the back of the shelf and nobody really wants it. Look at this. There it is. That's this fancy port, right? How do you like the apples? So that's one of the things. Yeah.
It probably tastes amazing. Like it doesn't matter what it looks like. It probably like really, really goes up.
Oh, I'm sure it's phenomenal. Port is great. So anyway, they're looking at all these different ones. Includes a bottle of this. They say that'll fetch between 30 and 40,000 rand. Klein Constantia Vin de Constance, which is 35,000 rand, and a 1957 Chateau Libertas that they're looking to sell at between 17 and 20,000 rand.
That's overly. I'd still rather choose like crackling from Potchefstroom over like this.
Pearl, what?
The stuff that you get in a box with a tap on it. That's what you're looking
That thing is like 16 rand. 16 rand, 17 rand, you sorted for like the whole night.
Good stuff right there. Some of the finest out of Potch.
Oh, yeah, because they grow so much great stuff in pot. All right, so listen to this. This is from News 24. Cyril Ramaphosa, the president, has appointed 9 people to form part of a national anti-corruption advisory council. So he doesn't know what corruption is. He needs a team of people to tell him. The president.
Also, 19 isn't enough in this country. You need like a couple thousand. We got a lot of shit to do.
They'll also be corrupt, is the sad thing.
The presidency on Monday announced the move. It's characterized as strengthening South Africa's fight against fraud and corruption. I've been listening to Cyril talk about fraud and corruption for all the time he's been president. And I keep thinking, but dude, you must be really, really bad at this whole like identifying corruption thing, because you were in the cabinet while Jacob Zuma was doing the whole, state capture thing. And you were like, huh? I didn't know that was going on. Huh? I'm so shocked. This guy's really, really doff when it comes to these kinds of things. So he needs a whole bunch of other people to help him do it. And I've never heard of these people. Maybe you have. They come from diverse backgrounds of civil society, academia, and labor. You ready? Kavisha Pillay, David Harris Lewis, Nkosana Dulupi, Barbara Schreiner, Nokuzula Gloria Kumalo, Professor Feroz Kachalia. I've heard of him. He's the only name so far that I recognize. Sekwetlane Pamoti and Tandega Kubule Becky, and then also Nkoskazi Nomandla Dorothy Mhlauli, who's the deputy chair. So I don't know any of those names except Feroz Kachalia. And apparently the council will help Ramaphosa to fight corruption and help with the effective implementation of the anti-corruption strategy by the government, blah, 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 blah. So there we go. He's appointed a panel.
Won't be hard for them to find corruption.
Hello, Baba.
I'm being bullied. Say hello to your uncles. Say hello.
So cute.
Yeah.
Hello.
Let me go put her to bed.
It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, dude, she's a child. 6:45. She should not be awake at this time.
I thought like 6 o'clock, children are up.
She's not 2-year-olds, no.
Just sticking its tongue out there. Look, have a look. All right, Lebang, we'll let you go and sort that out.
Yes.
All right, well, that's what the president's doing. He's busy appointing a team of people to advise him on corruption instead of actually just arresting people for corruption. Doesn't that seem like the thing to do? Just arrest them.
It's like one of those shoot yourself in the foot moments. This isn't going to end well.
No, it's
like
a waste of time.
Starting like a vegan protest. Like it doesn't work.
Right. Nobody cares, right? All right, so that's one thing in the headlines. Here's another thing. Fuel prices are still on track for a cut. Oh, this is great news. Let's take every little cut we can get, right?
Is it the first Wednesday?
So according to the latest data, the price of 95 unleaded petrol is expected to fall by around 2.28 Rand a litre in the first week of September. That's fantastic news. The price of 93 petrol could drop around 2.12 Rand a litre. Diesel could be reduced by more than R1 a litre. So that's all very good news, and we'll take it. Earlier this month, it looked like a 2 Rand. You were saying?
I went to go fill up like 2 days ago, and I was like, dude, is it going down? He's like, yeah. It goes down first week of September. I was like, cool, let's just tiny bit in now, and then next week we check in on those savings.
Yeah, well, I suppose prices coming down doesn't always translate into lower prices everywhere, because the problem with that is that obviously they put up food prices and everything else when the petrol price goes up, but they never bring those food prices down. So even if petrol comes down, you go to the shops now, you'll see they're not going to suddenly go, oh, well, bread and milk and everything else is coming down by 50 cents. When the prices go up, they keep prices up.
Everything goes up except for your salary. Everything around you will go up except for the salary, honey.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's going on. What else can we look at here? There's quite a lot of news this morning, actually. I'm surprised. I thought that this week was going to be a very dull, uninteresting week because, when when politicians make the news, it's never exciting. More bad news for struggling South Africans. The 350 Rand grant payments are expected to be delayed. Now, why is this important? Well, a lot of people depend on this. According to various reports, it looks like there will be a delay. What could be the reason? Well, it seems the government has implemented new regulations for the grant. More regulations. In early August, Lindiwe Zulu, who's the Social Development Minister, gazetted changes to the grant regulations. So what they've done, they're still calling this COVID relief, by the way. She's calling or asking the grant amount to be increased from 350 to 642 a month. This is in order to align with the food poverty line. South African Social Security Agency said more people can apply for the grant as regulations have been amended. So who knows what's going to happen there? But it seems
it's so sad. It's very sad, guys. I actually once went to the post office. Sorry, Flax. I once went to the post office. There was this huge line. I was like, Jesus, everybody, needing the post office. And then the guy that works is like, no, this is the line for the grant. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. These people in that line for about 2-3 hours. And then at the end of that, they're like, oh, sorry, everyone. None of you will be getting a 350 today because we have no more cash. Those poor people. I was like, what? This was in Sunninghill. Dude, I was so upset. I was like trying to fight for them. Like, can we go draw some money somewhere? These people clearly need this 350. And that line was long, guys. It made me very sad. Like, the reality of what's happening in this country, sometimes it just hits you and you're like, crap. It's actually very real. It's very real.
That's really awful. Jesus. So, Flax,
for the anti-corruption Avengers. Like, literally just open up the Sunday Times and pick a page to go after.
Lebang, are you also hearing him like a chipmunk again?
Dude, I'm definitely hearing him like a chipmunk, and I don't know what to do about it. Like, I've just accepted that this is how Flax speaks.
Yeah, that's some people who've never met him before will think that's what he actually sounds like. And
he really doesn't.
I bet Cyril's corruption council will sound as bad as Flax's mic. Sorry, Flax, what were you saying? Because this thing is not working.
Oh, and it was quality. It was such quality. I was saying that this anti-corruption Avengers could literally just pick up the Sunday Times and point on a page to go after.
Yeah, that's all they need. We need another panel.
Then I turned into a chipmunk.
Have you guys seen what the World Economic Forum wants us to be eating in 2030? You're gonna love this. All right, so I'm just put this up on the screen as well because this is unbelievable. So the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. We've been talking about them almost every day. They're a bunch of assholes, like these really rich people who get together every year in Davos or wherever, and then they tell us how the world's going to work. And these are the people who were supposedly helping us through COVID and ended up doing a worse job than anything else. So I'm going to put this up on the screen. You cannot actually believe what these people think our diet will consist of by 2030. 2030 is not that far away, huh? We're a couple of months off of 2023. So here's what they say we're going to be eating. Are you ready? This is the World Economic Forum. So it's divided this pie into 5 parts. The biggest part is intermittent fasting. So we won't be eating. We will eat 40% less food in 2030 to meet net zero. This is good for our waistlines and good for the planet. You can eat nothing and be happy. This is an actual...
what a load of bullshit.
Have you ever heard such shit in your life, right? So this is how they're talking to us. Then the little piece down at the bottom there is alternative proteins, all right? A third of our protein will come from soy-based proteins, lab-grown meat, and upcycled citizens. Now, I'm pretty sure this is a joke when I see upcycled citizens. I can't believe
the hell is that?
They're going to feed us, dead people? I'm pretty sure.
Just to add on.
All right, then the next one across is micro livestock. 2/3 of our protein needs will come from micro livestock like cockroaches, flies, and worms. Fantastic.
I can tell you Tasha's is not going to serve any micro livestock in their dish.
Then the piece at the top is micronutrients and synthetic nutrients. Most fresh fruit and vegetables will be replaced by supplements made by World Economic Forum partnered corporations.
They created the problem and the company to solve it. Geniuses.
Exactly. exactly. And then at the top there, seed oils. Oils like canola and more sustainable are more sustainable. Plus, they reduce levels of toxic testosterone. So, of course, they want to eliminate men as part of the plan here too. We all end up.
I mean, this is probably the first thing that they're saying that could be applicable.
Listen, this is, I mean, obviously there's a part of this that's a joke, but I wouldn't put it past these assholes to decide, oh, you know what? Why do these people, it's no different to Marie Antoinette saying, let them eat cake. This is the World Economic Forum saying, let them eat insects. Screw them. Why should they be happy? Why should they have anything nice to eat? So there we go.
This upcycled citizens. Are you sure they didn't mean to say recycled citizens?
Upcycled citizens, I'm pretty sure it's like, eat your dead.
Oh, Lord.
Steve E says Soylent Green. Well, if you've ever watched that movie, there was a movie that they brought out. I think it was in the 70s or the 80s. It's called Soylent Green, where basically there's this huge corporation, and they promise people that they will have the best and most nutritious meal. They just have to eat the stuff called Soylent Green. And then by the end of the movie, I'm just going to skip to the end. By the end of the movie, the dude who's the main protagonist finds out that Soylent Green is just recycled human beings. They just basically put people into this giant mincer, and then what you're actually eating is like dead people. And this is the movie. So I'm telling you, we're not far off. These guys are, listen, this World Economic Forum, part of it is like, no, it's not possible that someone could be so like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers evil. But actually, like this Klaus Schwab is a bit like a villain from a movie, from a superhero movie. That's what he is.
And don't put anything past human beings. Human beings are capable of things. Hey, they will surprise you. It sounds like a lot of hogwash, but dude, hey, things are happening outside. Hey, people are capable of a lot, like consuming one another.
Corona's Boring says they missed out on boogers. You don't want to throw that nutrient out of your nose. That's also upcycling.
Oh my God.
And then G Star says, every time I hear the hear of the WEF, I hear Star Wars Dark Side music. Yeah, that's right. Anyway. All right. So I thought I'd upset you this morning because yesterday we were talking about food for about, I don't know, half an hour, Mash and Leanne and I. And then after the show, I was just hungry. So today, after we've talked about all this gross stuff like insects and upcycling humans and eating, snot from your nose, I don't think anyone's going to be hungry today. So we'll do that intermittent fasting that they spoke about. That's the biggest part of the pie, remember?
I love how these trends, we went from Tim Noakes to now now don't even eat. Like,
no.
Don't cut out carbs, like cut out everything. Now don't breathe, and now recycle human beings.
These are the people who are making decisions for us. Okay, so Flax, I don't know if we're going to see you again before your birthday. So happy birthday for that. And 30's a big one.
Thanks
it's going to be
That's
loads
so crazy.
of fun.
I'll see you when I'm a different age again. This is the last time you'll see me when I'm 29.
I got bad news. That's kind of how it works every time. I mean, even if I see Lebang every week, it's always a different age.
Yep, literally. Always just a little bit wiser.
Oh, wow.
You must enjoy the club, man. That club sounds amazing.
Oh my God. You'll see me at the Psalmers next year. I'm going to be, once they catch on to me at the club, I'm headlining the Psalmers.
That's what I'm talking about.
They'll put me in the vacation club.
Yeah.
Ooh, vacation club.
So Tracy says in 2030 our windscreen will be like the buffet. It'll be all splattered bugs. Yum.
Yo, guys.
No, have you seen though that they're trying very hard to market these insects to us? Who was it the other day that I saw? Some famous person who was saying, "Oh no, insects are great. I love eating insects. I had a something the other day, like a schnitzel of bugs or whatever." And I thought,
Fear Factor. No. What is happening? Like watching Fear Factor growing up, you saw why we shouldn't be eating bugs.
Correct.
It's not fun to eat, guys. Like now, what we normalizing this? Whoa.
I won't. I'm out.
Nah, sign me out. No, thank you.
What else did they have on Fear Factor? They used to make people like. It wasn't just, no, it wasn't just bugs. There were other things they made them eat and taste.
Like
It was
animal balls,
yeah,
and
like animal
penis,
balls,
like weird stuff. Yeah,
I'll tell you what, I would
it
rather
was
eat
nasty.
animal balls than bugs.
I'd rather not eat.
Would you rather eat animal balls or brains?
Well, if it's animal balls or brains or bugs, I'll still rather go for animal balls or brains. I think there's more nutrition in animal balls or brains. But I'm not lining up for it. I mean, we've discussed this before too. I don't know how we're back on food, but there's some parts of animals that you're not meant to eat. You know, like it's not for me. No. And you can. What did I have the other day that I thought? Oh, you know what it was? So I went to this restaurant and ordered duck. And you know, if you don't cook duck properly, like a lot of people don't know how to cook duck. I don't know how to cook duck, so I'm not going to claim to know anything about it. But if you don't do duck properly, it can be a real disaster. It's not like cooking chicken. And people will tell you that, people who really know. That's why I'm just quoting them. I don't personally know. I've never cooked duck in my life. But if you do it right, I mean, like crispy duck is awesome. But you can't have it too often. It's like, you know, it's not something that you would. First of all, it's expensive. Second of all, it does taste very different to chicken or anything else. And it's a nice thing to have every now and then. But even that's quite exotic these days. I mean, I don't think, it's not something that I would have on the menu once a week.
Nah, definitely.
No, but it's what you're saying. It's what you're saying about like people messing it up. Like you have to know how to make it. If you leave it for just like an extra 5 minutes in the heat, it now gets way too dry. So there's like a sweet spot where you need to stop. And there's only a few places I think that know how to make a good duck. So it's quite sad when you get there and you're like, oh, they've overcooked it and I need to sit there and eat it.
So you're not going to be doing it in the air fryer. Bing! Like and subscribe anytime soon.
Love it. I don't think so. No, I'll just leave that to the experts. I'll just keep it here with like the chickens and the slap chips. That's where we'll live.
That's your thing. All right, so there we are. And suddenly we're back on air fryers with Lebang. No surprises there. Apparently, are you supposed to wash duck before you cook it? You see, yesterday again, Mash didn't wash his chicken before he cooked it the other day, and someone like gave him shit about it on social media. G-Star says, yeah, you have to wash your chicken before you cook it, but then some people said you don't. Some people said it's actually
you don't. You take it out the packet and you put it in the air fryer. The heat will kill everything.
That's what I thought too. If you consider the lies we are expected to believe in today's world, eating bugs and upcycling people is not such a stretch. I mean, some pro-choicers want abortion available even after birth. Yeah, there are people that crazy. Matthew Dixon says, balls with chilies. Will the menu say balls on fire?
That's good.
So, in other words, as propaganda says, finding insects and rats in restaurant food is actually just the prequel to what we're actually going to end up doing, where we will be eating this stuff as part of the meal, not just as like, oh my God, there's a bug in my food. It's going to be like, oh, yay, there's a bug in my food. I'm so lucky.
We won't charge extra for that. That was a mistake. Sorry.
The bug is on the house.
Yeah.
That bug we'll give you as a bonus. Okay, over here, if you consider the, hang on, wait a second. Welcome to the GCS Fear Factor edition. Well, we did an edition of that a while ago. A couple of years ago, though. I used to do this Survivor game where I'd get celebrities in and make them eat weird things. I think one of the things that they had to eat was Mapani worms, but that's, they all like dried out.
That's that's fine.
Not great. So I've tasted those before. We had Mapani worms. What else did we have?
It depends how you prepare them. Like I've had delicious Mapani worms. Like
Really?
my mom makes them with like a gravy. Yeah. And they soft. It's not those hard ones where you like it's actually like really, really nice. It's good. That I get.
You have it as like the main dish or like a starter?
It's the meat. So if you're not having chicken or beef or whatever, you just do the pap and then you throw in some Mapani worms. Dog, you're sorted.
See, this is where I'm just going to point out this is where it starts, guys. Now you're saying okay to Mapani worms. Before you know it, you'll be eating all that shit on that menu I just gave you. From the world
I just joined the cult. Let's do this.
All right. Listen, Flax, good luck with your birthday, and we will we'll
you.
celebrate with you, even if we're not there in this gangster club with you. And Lebang, we will see you next week.
See you guys next week. Have a good one, guys.
Great. We're going to carry on with the show. We got other good stuff heading your way in the next hour, so don't go anywhere. cliffcentral.com. Stick around. I'll tell you what's up next in just a moment. Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic and is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The place of dusty votes, 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 the place of dusty votes. Dream chasing platinum and gold, only a chosen few are blessed to grow old. It's the ghetto, West Side Orlando, hunger so high like it has an echo. Brainless chicken heads, dogs with macho egos, living in the darkest sides of their shadows. Understanding hustlers, money hungry blood suckers, the place of street fighters, hijackers and car strippers. Gunshot saluters, home of the asylum tripers. Winter breeze couldn't get colder than most niggas' shoulders. Snake headed with venom mentality, wingless pigeons reaching to reach the sky. I stay high watching time fly in the ghetto. I might as well tell you a story about the ghetto street where you feel no glory. It's lonely sometimes, you're feeling so phony. Type of stormy clouds, they be coming down, turning all grey. Always trying to be singing Amazing Grace. Looking at somebody's amazing face. I'm talking about a beautiful face, a beautiful woman you wouldn't even try to ridicule. I'm talking about the ghetto, and now she's filled with makeup. So many beautiful ghetto queens they make up. I try to make up with the girls in the past, and I try to think to myself, is this future gonna last? If I keep it in my mind for a time and trying to find these rhymes and trying to find the perfect line in these ghetto streets of mine. Some pop guns, some even wanna think about popping hands, breaking the virgin, waste the gun. You're trying to be robbing the store with no Batman, but I'm robbing with a Batman. You want a Batman? I pack more mans than Pac-Man. When I eat a plan, I sell them tribes. So where go? You see, that's where we at. So we're 10.
All right, cliffcentral.com on a Tuesday morning. We're almost at the end of August. Tomorrow, the last day. So most people should have had their payday already. And hopefully you've still got some money left in your account. It's that time of year. You have to start thinking about holidays and all the other stuff. I have not given it a second thought. One of my friends said to me on, when was it? I think on Friday. She said, "Oh, what are we doing in December?" So I said, I have no idea. I don't even know what I'm doing this month, and it's almost over. So if you've already thought about those things, well done. You're far ahead. So here's Corona's Boring, who says, does anyone know which piece of shit politician is driving around Durban in a Rolls Royce with blue lights? I take serious exception to that. Yeah. Let me tell you something. When these guys actually thumb their noses at us and they're that crass about how much money they have, I'm not going to say that you should scratch their cars, but maybe, if you happen to have a key handy, it would be something worth doing. We live in a country where there's so many people who just have absolutely nothing. And for a politician, the cheek of a politician, or even someone who's got some government tender, to be driving around in that kind of a car with a blue light is just outrageous. Because it means that they're obviously connected to the system, right? They're not somebody who's just made a lot of money, come up with a good idea, served a community, sold a product that everyone wants. That's fine. If you have a Rolls Royce and those are your things, but if you have a blue light on your Rolls Royce, it means that you're in politics. And if you're in politics, you shouldn't have a car like that. We should just make it a rule that if you're a politician, the maximum you can have is the average salary of the average South African. Because then politicians would work harder to make the average South African salary a bit better so that they could get more themselves. And in doing so, they'd help everybody else at the same time. But they should not earn a single cent more than that. That's my rule. So if you're a politician, you only get paid what the average South African salary is, which at this stage is, I think, somewhere around 7,000 Rand a month. That's all. So if politicians want more than 7,000 Rand a month, then they need to make sure that the average South African is earning more than 7,000 Rand a month. All right. Got a bunch of things to get to this morning. And one of the things that I'm very excited to do is talk to a guy called Bill Nasson. Bill is a professor of history. And you know what a history fan I am. You know how much we love history on the show. But we've also done a number of seasons of blind history. And by the way, we're going to be starting a new one soon. And Bill is actually one of the people who's helped write a book called The New History of South Africa. We talk a little bit about the book here as well. But mostly we talk about what should be in the syllabus, why history is an important subject, why people should study it. Because, I mean, obviously Bill and I have an interest in it, but really it's about people. And it's the story of amazing people. It's the story of this amazing country. And if you're missing out on it, I really think there's like a big gap in your world. So whenever I get a chance to speak to a professor of history, it's something I studied at university. I feel like I get to have, you know, the brain of someone who, and remember, Bill in this case, you'll hear when we go through all of his previous experience. He's lectured at Cambridge, he's lectured in the United States, he's been at UCT at Stellenbosch. He's a really smart human being and knows an awful lot about history, and you can hear it in the way he talks about it. So without further ado, let's get to hear from Bill Nasson. And this is something we recorded just the other day, so it's not live, but I thought I'd let you hear it first here on the show. So here he is, Bill Nasson, a professor of history and someone who's just written a book that you may be interested in hearing about. I'll give you all of the details in the interview. Stick around for that and more. Anyone who listens to the show knows that I'm a massive history nerd, and I love nothing more than reading and learning about the history of not only our own country, but you know, everything else that's happened before we came along. And I think there's nothing worse than meeting somebody who thinks that the whole world started when they came along, like, you know, for example, Donald Trump. But this morning, I'm thrilled to be able to talk to someone who has, along with Herman Gilliamier and Bernard Mbenga and a number of other terrific writers, they've managed to put in historians. They managed to put a tremendous book together about the history of South Africa. And this is called The New History of South Africa, something which I got my teeth into and started taking a look at virtually as soon as it arrived. I'm thrilled to have one of those authors with me today. He is none other than Professor Bill Nasson. Bill, it's very nice to see you, and thank you very much for your time.
Nice to see you, Gareth, and thank you very much for your interest in the book and having me on your prestigious show. Thank you.
Well, I hope it's prestigious enough. I mean, I know, you know, history will be the judge of anything, and that's what makes speaking to historians such fun. First of all, congratulations on the book. You know, it's a difficult and it's an arduous and it's almost an impossible task to put together a history of a country, even a country as young as South Africa by comparative standards. But obviously, you know, different parts of the book were written by different authors, and I have no doubt that the three of you who are given, you know, kind of top billing on the cover here, you, Herman, and Bernard. I'm sure that the three of you spent an inordinate amount of time putting this together and compiling your various responsible parts of the book. Was it fun to do, or was it a difficult and horrible task?
I think you need to have very good and patient publishers, which we fortunately had. My previous experience of editing sort of compendiums like this is that it's a bit like herding cats. You know, it's not necessarily always an enjoyable experience, but it's very satisfying when it all comes together at the end. I mean, as you may have spotted, it's really a new edition of an earlier version of the New History of South Africa, which came out in 2007. So it's not quite new wine in an old bottle, but slightly more mature wine in a slightly fresher bottle would be the most accurate way of describing it. Yeah,
we'll talk about school syllabus in a moment or two, and we'll talk about what kind of a history the students of today are learning about, because I think it must be a very different one to the kind of history that either you or I learned when we were at school. But it's worth me just giving everybody who's not sure of your reputation just a little bit of background. So Bill is an emeritus professor of history at Stellenbosch University. He's also a fellow of the Stellenbosch Institute for Advanced Study. He's also served as professor of history and the head of the department at Cape Town University for 2 decades. That's nothing to smirk at. He's also held fellowships at Yale, University of Cambridge, the Australian National University, the Australia of Kent, and Trinity College in Dublin. And he was co-editor of the Cambridge History of South Africa, and many other writings. I mean, really, in terms of your CV, you're unassailable, Bill. This is a great thing to be able to sit here and talk to you. It's almost like being able to go and walk into the history building at any of our reputable universities and just sit down with without an appointment for 20 minutes with someone smart.
Well, I delete the smart. I'm not sure about that, but I think you're being very, very indulgent. Thank you very much for your recognition. Yes.
Well, where do we even start when you look at the history of South Africa, which obviously is a very complicated thing to do? First of all, because you have to divide it up into periods. You have to decide which period's the most important for us to look at from the point of view of where we are at the moment. But you also have to take in political points of view. And so much of South Africa's history is enormously contentious, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I mean, I think the thing about going to the past or looking at the past through the lens of history is that you're always rewriting the past. I mean, I'm sure we both agree on that all history of the past is sort of present history. I mean, how you see the past through the present. So today you wouldn't see the history of South Africa starting with the beginning of colonization, for instance. You'd go back much further, which is what we do in this book. So, I mean, you started off by saying South Africa is a very young country, which is an interesting paradox because it is very young. I mean, South Africa as a sort of political state really only existed since 1910, but it's also a very, very old country. And one of the first section of the book is really about the very early settlement of South Africa,
Well, you could even claim long before that we were the cradle of civilization.
Yeah. I mean, you go back through millennia to the very origins of humankind in this part of the continent. So in that sense, the book is about a new country, but also about a very old country. And that's one of the very many paradoxes of South Africa. And the other thing, if I can just slip this in quickly, is that a lot of it is about migration. The history of South Africa is the history of migration. And that, again, is a very present resonance, where we live in the midst of xenophobia and so on. Because, I mean, all countries are the products of migration, except someone once told me Kenya. Kenya is the world's only country which is not the product of migration.
How do they figure that?
I don't know. I'm not an archaeologist, but I think archaeologists have figured. Archaeologists contribute to this book. So,
with the benefit of hindsight, maybe in 2,000 years, if the human species survives that much longer, they'd look back and see all of this very wide array of time that you've just described as being a blip on the radar. And maybe the South Africa that exists in even 100 years from now won't even look or sound or feel like the South Africa we're in right now. And as a history professor and as an author of and someone who's trying to document as accurately as possible the history of a country, you have to be quite humble.
Yes, no, you do. I mean, you can't but be dwarfed by these massive processes and these massive events and trying to make sense of them, I mean, what we do in this book is to try to get as close to the present as possible. So the most difficult chunk in the book, I thought or think, is the bit that I ended up having to do, sod's law, is the sort of Zoomer section, dealing with the very last president. But that was probably the worst bit of writing I've ever had to do. It's the closest thing to aversion therapy, I think.
Not to mention somewhat depressing.
And depressing. Oh yes, no, utterly gloomy, and you have to, in a way, I've got something in the epilogue, and this book has sort of end pieces and front pieces, and part of that is thinking about how South Africa just continues to cohere, and it's one of these countries which function despite their governments.
That's such a good point. I often talk about this on the show, and again, I love talking to people who have the benefit of a wide lens when it comes to subjects like history. Unfortunately, too many other subjects are about the moment, the present, and whatever discovery or whatever investment or whatever economic situation is at hand, with the benefit of a wide lens to look back on, and the understanding that over a huge period of time so much can happen and so many ways of interpreting it can arise. Do you agree that this really is, despite the fact that we often feel sorry for ourselves, the best time to be alive? I mean, if I'd plunked you back at any point in South African history before now, you'd probably have a lot more trouble. You'd be a lot more concerned. You might be very deeply worried about your safety and your your immediate survival more than anything else. This is the best time, right?
Well, in some ways, I mean, it's like Dickens, the best of times, the worst of times. Let's not forget that from A Tale of Two Cities. But I think, I mean, one of the many paradoxes about South Africa is that it's actually, historically, it's a remarkably safe country in which to live, and which to have gone through the 20th century. The world wars did virtually nothing. There was the Spanish flu in 1918, and of course AIDS in more recent decades. But actually life expectancy has gone up through the 20th century. There's been no genocides to speak of.
Right.
So South Africa, paradoxically, is quite safe in comparison with Europe. I mean, we only have to look at the Ukraine and Eastern Europe today, and I find that an intriguing thing and a sobering thing to reflect on. Let's not forget to count some of our blessings.
Well, speaking of those blessings, I mean, in terms of the overall history of South Africa, we're in an interesting place geographically. We're in an interesting time politically. We have a very diverse and interesting population dynamic. There are loads of things that actually make us quite a remarkable place. And I know that there are countries that can claim maybe to have even more diversity. There are countries that can claim to be more wealthy in minerals or in natural resources. There are probably countries, although I struggle to think of them, that are less victim to natural disasters than we are. We've got quite scot-free on that front too. We sometimes think we're a bit isolated, but in some ways that's also quite good geopolitically some of the time, right?
Yes, I think I agree. I mean, I think you wouldn't think of Ireland as being a place of wonderful balmy beaches and warm weather, but I mean, Ireland is in a similar sort of position. A sort of small country, but fantastically rich with literature and writers and musicians and away from these dangerous currents that swirl around many other countries. So South Africa, as long as South Africa doesn't get too big for its boots, which it sometimes does and has done so in history, it's not, yes, if South Africa retains a modest sense of itself, then things could, keep on ticking over, I think.
Is it a very difficult thing when you're putting a book like this together, and especially when you're writing a chapter like yours at the end about the Zuma years? Is it very difficult to balance fairly? And again, this is not a perfect science. History is not a scientific subject for that reason. Is it a difficult thing to balance the cultural interests and the political interests of so many diverse people?
Oh, it's very difficult. I mean, it's very difficult to deal with in ways that don't compartmentalize people. into, racial silos or whatever. We live in a period where there's we know the period through which we are living, where there's a sort of race obsessiveness.
Yeah.
But what we try to do in the book is to find other ways of thinking about those things through other prisms. I think, for instance, the early part of the book with the settlement of the Cape, there's quite a lot about religion. And I always think religion is one of the neglected themes in many South African histories. We live in a deeply religious country. I mean, I'm personally not religious, but you have to recognize that the society in which you live is profoundly religious, much more so than many other countries. It's religious like, the rest of Africa.
You're so right. I'm not a religious person, but the average South African is quite religious and quite conservative.
Oh, yes. I mean, I think that's the other thing. Conservative, and things like, respectability and to use that Afrikaans, but ordentlikheid, just being well-behaved. Family values, very, very powerful. Yeah. I mean, much more so than most other countries I can think of offhand, certainly countries in which I've traveled, much more so than New Zealand or Australia, let's say.
Yeah, it seems like an easy thing for people who studied history in a kind of passing pedestrian way to kind of just consign us to this country that had this race story. But I see so often that there are massive overlaps between the way Afrikaners felt about themselves, for example, and the way Zulus feel about themselves. And I'm sure this is a subject of discussion in many of your lectures and has been in many of your books and probably even your dinner conversations a lot of the time.
Yes. Yes, so that's a bit, to get back to the Irish, the Afrikaners, the Irish and the Zulus, you could say, are burdened by grievances, that's, have been historically. And, the best thing that they can do is to shuffle off those grievances. It may take some time, but eventually they will go, or they have gone. I mean, I don't get a sense that it's very difficult, again, as historians, to generalize about what people think today. But I suspect, that, I mean, no one really goes on about the concentration camps, really. I mean, aside from a small fringe.
Yeah, we were the country that first tried out guerrilla warfare on any scale, and we were the country where the British first tried to do that with concentration camps, weren't we?
Yes. Well, that's South Africa's also a place of myths. I mean, guerrilla wars started sort of before the Boer guerrillas took up arms. I mean, in the late 19th century in the Philippines and elsewhere, there was guerrilla warfare. And the British are actually unfairly credited. I don't think credited is the right word, but infamously credited with having started concentration camps. But again, the French used concentration camps in North Africa and so on. The British simply carried it to more incompetent and more extensive measures here. And of course, it was a bumbling disaster, as we know.
Yeah. Oh no! Look, there are so many things. There's so many things in South African history that are just very embarrassing, and we have to face up to those too. One of the things I think that makes us quite interesting, and that I think is a source of some pride to us, is that there are some very, very ancient hunter-gatherer cultures who continue. They exist under. I mean, they're imperiled on all sides now, and their original areas that they used to dwell in are now hardly recognizable to them. They've been pushed into far corners of the most arid parts of South Africa. But we've got that as a unique population, the Khoi and the San. Then we've got the amazing Cape Colored population who, these people, while they have diverse ancestry, are a uniquely South African population. They don't exist anywhere else.
Yes. No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think South Africa also, and you encounter these figures in the book, a lot of really interesting unsung government or public figures. I mean, you take Andre Stockenstrom in the Cape in the 19th century. He was a very interesting liberal figure, and Robert Southey was also a colonial figure, but was an abolitionist. I mean, he was against capital punishment and he was anti-slavery. And here he was running the Cape in the 1850s. and a strong believer in a multiracial franchise. So I think I think there's a tendency for, particularly under the nationalists today, who have their own versions of villains and heroes, that one of the problems with South Africa is to get away from history being a story of villains and heroes, and just history being a sort of bit more of a mix,
But unfortunately, this is something which I think you probably find even more irritating than me, because no one's ever called on me to contribute to this. But they try to put out these lists of the greatest South Africans.
Yes.
And well, I mean, where do you, again, your villain might be someone else's hero and vice versa. But there are again, you have to have such a deep knowledge of history to understand that some of the best stories are not famous, powerful, or wealthy individuals who did, things with that power, wealth, or fame. But sometimes these amazing stories that become part of our national myth, these stories about Dingaan or Volrad Voltemade or, the Codessa talks or whatever it might be. These are things which I find probably a lot more interesting than just compiling a list, which will feature obviously the Nelson Mandelas, the Desmond Tutus.
I think all countries need myths of some kind. And I like the Welsh historian Gwyn Williams, of whom I'm a great fan, who said that, he said something along these lines, that countries all need their own myths. But what matters is that they have to be myths that walk, as he puts it. I love that phrase. Myths that walk, that myths that people can really properly internalize. And those are not the myths of great men or great women. They're just much closer to ordinary life, and much closer to, the flux of daily existence. And the black sash here in the 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the kind of,
Oh, we did just have women. There's one
the
famous, women who led that march who's still alive, and even her version of history is different to perhaps how so many people wrote it down then. This is the problem, right?
Sure,
I'll move off of general history in a second, because I do want to talk about your own love of history and where that came from and what you're most interested in now. And we'll talk obviously in some more detail about the book. But where did it all begin for you? I mean, were you one of those children who was lucky enough to have had a good history teacher? Because that's what happened to me, and that won me over early.
Yes, I mean, I didn't grow up in a house with lots of books. I grew up as a little nerd, really, with ethics toy soldiers, so I grew up fascinated by the Second World War, and I think a lot of people of my generation would have had the same experience. So I suppose my interest in the past was World War II. And the idea of, the heroic Britons defeating the terrible Nazis. But then at school, I had, like you, wonderful history teacher, extraordinary history teacher who would teach us. He told us we needed to understand Fowler and Smith, which was a notorious nationalist textbook then. And he said, you need to understand this book in order to pass exams when you get to matric. But you also need to know the other stuff. So let me tell you the other stuff. So he gave us both. So we had, I think it's what educational theorists call a hidden curriculum. So that's what our history lessons were like. Our history lessons were the official history lesson. And then once or twice a week, we'd have another history lesson, including, debates and quizzes and so on, about what he called the real story, which today you wouldn't call the real story. You'd call it something else. You'd call it another version or something. But that was amazing, and that just got me, really gripped me. And then at university, I had amazing history lecturers who were inspirational. And
well, you say the word story because story makes up part of the word history, and obviously, obviously the great stories of our past are. They're a window onto where we come from, and everybody wants to know a little bit about where they come from, if not a lot.
Yes. Yes.
Did you take an interest in kind of your own history, your own family history, or is that something that came after all of the other subject matter?
No, I've never really been interested in my own history or family history because I don't know. I think I'm sort of fairly boring person. So I'm more interested. I think I'm more interested in other people. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. I'm interested in other people's stories.
Well,
interested.
Interested is interesting, and I don't think anyone who's written as many books as you have can claim to be boring.
No, I mean, one of the jobs I really liked was when I, after a period of a decade more studying and working in Britain, I came back, and then I had a job in an oral history project at UCT. My first job here in about 1985, and that was interviewing residents who'd been in District 6. And that was extraordinary, really. So we basically went out and interviewed residents who'd been displaced. And of course, you interview the most extraordinary range of people. I mean, I'll tell you one story, if you've got the time, one story. I interviewed a woman who said to me, I used to walk up the mountain, above Woodstock. And I used to walk up on Sunday mornings, and then I would meet the unsmuts. And I looked at her and I said, really? I mean, skeptically. She said, oh, yes, we would stop and have a chat and so on, Obas with his hat and so on. And she said, you don't believe me, do you? And I said, well, I'm not sure, really. I didn't want to be rude and say, no, I don't. And she said, well, let me show you. And she went and she came back with a little shoebox. Mm-hmm. And inside were a collection of photographs she'd taken of Jan Smuts with her Brownie box camera.
Incredible.
Smiling, incredible story, really. And I said, what did you talk about? And, she went on about what they talked about, the state of the country, the state of the world, and plants, because Smuts, of course, was a great botanist. But that was an extraordinary. But, I mean, for me, that's, that just keeps you going. Amazing. If you really, if history is kind of,
And unfortunately, this is also the problem with history, right? If you hadn't encountered her, if she hadn't told you that story, if you hadn't included it in the record, it would have been lost. And this is true of so much of history. And of course, in South Africa, the oral tradition is the major means by which so much of our history, particularly Black African history, is transmitted.
It's transmitted. Yeah, it's transmitted. Exactly. And needs to be.
Are we doing a better job of recording that stuff now?
I think we are now. I think, yes. I mean, it seems to me that the job is really to make it accessible for general readers. And I think, I don't want to get into trouble here with academic colleagues, but I think one of the problems in South African history is that there's a lot of highly theorized academic writing, which is not really accessible to general readers. And I think that the job, your professional job really should be to make your findings and your research accessible to the myth of the interested general reader, and just write plainly and understandably, really. So,
are there any of the things that you remember learning early on in your life that have been completely turned around by new discoveries, either archaeological or from the oral tradition, or anywhere else that you actually had to pause and go, oh wow, that's changed an enormous chapter of what I thought South African history was settled as?
Oh gosh, that's well, I suppose I knew from school that the Van Riebeeck stuff was, that's when the world started here, when Van Riebeeck arrived on these shores. I think that was about 52 and so on. But I mean, there are some very interesting. Can I tell you another little story? So there's Saul Plaatje, who the first Secretary General of the ANC, the South African National Congress back then, and he lived in Kimberley, and he had a fight with his landlord about the rent. The landlord put up the rent, and hadn't given him sufficient warning, so they had an argument. And the landlord called him that notorious K word, which we dare not utter in public or even privately in South Africa, right?
No,
so he took the landlord to court because he could. In the Cape Colony, there was legal equality, and he brought a civil claim against the landlord for defaming him by calling him that terrible word.
Right.
And the landlord lost. had to pay damages,
Yeah.
and had to print an apology in the Kimberley Advertiser, Diamond Fields Advertiser. But the fascinating thing about the case is that when you actually look at the trial records, is what does Saul Plaatje say in his defense? Plaatje says, how dare this man call me that word? I'm not that K word. Mine workers are that K word.
Oh, wow.
Farm workers are that K word.
Oh, wow.
I am an educated man.
Yeah.
I'm the interpreter for the Kimberley Magistrate. I'm busy translating Shakespeare into Tswana. I'm writing a novel. How dare you call me that? So you know what I mean? So it's a story which is not about race. It's about class. It's a story about class.
What a story.
I mean, for me, I used to use that story in teaching at UCT and in Stellenbosch for years. And students would sit there and their faces would drop. Because then I'd say, what is that story about? And you'd get a few hands up and would say, well, this is about racism. And so I said, no, think about what's actually being said.
Well, I mean, isn't class one of the last kind of refuges for those very, very dangerous historians like you who are prepared to go there? Because South Africa, we've always believed, we talk about the South African middle class and the working class, but we've never really believed we had an upper class. But for most of our history, we absolutely did. And there were some people, there still are, the various kings of the various tribes were, by all intents and purposes, considered aristocrats and upper class people.
Of course.
There were the English aristocrats who governed here famously during the period of English rule. The Dutch themselves
exactly, the Herengracht, the Heren, the Dutch, the top Dutch, the Dutch gentry, and the English landlords. I mean, they were all a very distinctive upper class in this country, a kind of, ill-gotten gains aristocracy who lorded it over everyone else.
Sometimes acted with even more, what would you even call it, arrogance than their European older brothers and sisters, because they were further away and could get away with more.
They could. No, that's it. Because Europe was reforming and changing, but out here, the relations were frozen. So, for example, if you take, we don't even need to take South Africa, take Kenya, where the British used to have in the 19th century masters and servants legislation, which gave the masters enormous power over their servants. But of course, that was outlawed in Britain by the end of the 19th century. But it continued in Kenya up to the 1960s.
And you must have a couple of stories, too, that you love to tell people in lectures and in your books about how these unexpected alliances between the races happened against the classes sometimes.
Yes.
And we know how complicated and patchy the Boers, the Xhosa, and the British were around the Eastern Cape area, and how much more that was complicated when the 1820 settlers were dispatched there. And again, how even inside the various Xhosa tribes, there were enormous rivalries, and people were selling out this one to that one. The British were making a deal with this one. The Afrikaners were fighting alongside these ones and then not those ones.
Yes, I mean, forming these alliances. You want a quick story? There's you take the Bambata Rebellion in Natal, 1906, which was the last armed African uprising against white colonial rule. So that rebellion was crushed by the Natal militia with tremendous ferocity. I mean, put Dina Zulu's head on a stick and paraded it through Pietermaritzburg, so to set an example. In Britain, in the House of Commons, Winston Churchill, who's, never been one of the great milksops of history, Winston Churchill denounced Natal and called it the hooligan of the British Empire for behaving like that. And this is the great story. So the Zulu leader was then sentenced to 6 years. I forget exactly how long, but for 6 years or longer sentenced to prison. And then in 1910, South Africa became a union. And who became the first prime minister? Louis Botha.
Right.
What's one of the first things Louis Botha did, because he now had that power of clemency as the country's first prime minister? He released Dinizulu from prison in Natal. Because, why did he do that? Because Dinizulu was his old chummy.
Right.
That he and Dinizulu had collaborated in the 1880s, and Dinizulu had assisted him. He'd assisted Dinizulu in some of his interfactional squabbles within the Zulu kingdom. So he released Dinizulu, who went to Louis Botha's farm and lived out the rest of his life as a guest on Louis Botha's farm. Now, that's a story you don't hear very often. And in standard histories, you don't hear that, actually. You just hear about Louis Botha and the Land Act. It's not to say that doesn't count. Of course it does. But there's also another side to the picture, which you also have to bear in mind, because it's about the complexity
Bill,
of things.
It must be very, very disheartening for you when you are required so often as a historian to summarize and to make concise something which is very complex. We're living in a complex time right now. We have so much going on a daily basis that if you picked up the newspapers, you'd be rightly confused. But a historian is then expected to come in, sometimes a very long time after that, and make a golden thread which leaves out so much of the big picture. And suddenly, if you're a great warrior king, then that's all you were. Shaka is just this great warrior king. There's no nuance. There's no discussion of any of the detail, unless, of course, you're prepared to go and do the work. And you know this also from all your writing about wars. People like to have a good guy and a bad guy, and that's it.
Yes, no, exactly. So that, I interviewed a white South African veteran of the Second World War, and he talked about South Africa in what was then sort of Ethiopia, Abyssinia. And they were there where they had African laborers, auxiliary troops with them. Right. And of course, the instruction, he said, was from Pretoria that Africans were not to be armed. But he said, well, they're also in danger like the rest of us. So the Italians around often left their weapons behind, and they just distributed the rifles to their African fellow soldiers. So they just armed them. So he said to me, what we thought was bugger smuts. He's not out here on the front line with putting his life in danger. We are.
Right.
Well, we all are. And we all have to look after each other. We're all soldiers. It's that sort of stuff, actually, that gets airbrushed out or lost because it's not politically convenient to bring up some of those nuances, And thank you. Your point about the nuances is so good. It's absolutely crucial.
Well, the other thing that has to happen is that people are required to plot the rise and fall of nations, right? So you're asked, okay, well, Bill, we've got this job for you by a publisher or anyone else, and they say, we want you to now chart South Africa's progress. And when we reached our peak, which some will say was 1994, and we were the darling of the world from being the skunk of the world, and we were flying high, we had all this moral capital that we could use to engender our place in the modern world and hopefully build something out of that. And you and I have lived through it, and everyone who's listening to this has probably lived through it. And then you're asked to take the graph and to continue it from 1994. And how do you think, if you had to draw that graph, and you've been asked to do it many times, this is not going to be a task for you, how do you think it's gone since then?
Well, it certainly hasn't gone on it hasn't gone upward, let's face it. I don't know. You can console yourself with the feeling that, there's a lovely line from the poet, Philip Larkin is one of my favorite poets, who says, who writes somewhere about, nations rise and fall like weeds and flowers. And then he's talking about the Welsh and rugby, actually. It's a satirical poem about, the Welsh were not the rugby playing giants they once were, although they haven't done too badly recently again. Well, there you are, you see. They've risen. I think there we are. So I think you could argue that South Africa, between the period, let's say 1910 to, up to 48, was, sort of on the rise in a manner of speaking. It was less badly affected by the Great Depression, less badly affected than other parts of the world, and so on. And then it goes through that sort of skunk apartheid period, and then it goes through the early flush that you've been talking about, or the rosy post-apartheid honeymoon. And I think now it's going through a bit of a dip, but, who knows? It's don't ask me. I'm an historian. I'm better on the past than on the present and the future.
Wow.
Yes.
The Zuma years are certainly, that's a horrible chapter to have to write. But there are amazing resources available to historians now that probably weren't available before. The ability to record things, the ability to have conversations like you and I are having now across a great distance. I'm able to pick your brain and ask you things which before I would have had to have been a paying student at UCT to be able to do. This is great news for everyone who loves history, isn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So much easier now. And I think, we live in a, I mean, this is something to celebrate. We live in a disobedient kind of society. I mean, that's, I think, one of South Africa's saving graces. I mean, there's some very bad things about it, drunk driving and so on. But in other respects, it's not a conformist kind of society. And that, I think, is one of the great hopes for the future. Long may it remain so, that we can chat like this. I mean, this, for instance, I mean, imagine trying this in the 1960s, for God's sake.
No.
No. Well, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Well, again,
so we can do that now,
Does it, and I know you don't sound like the kind of person who gives into irritation easily, but does it irritate you that people have a very short memory, and that their ability, as opposed to yours as someone who's made a life of studying history, does it annoy you sometimes that so many people, particularly young people, I've been going around wherever I could from school to school telling people, please study history, because it teaches you, it's the only subject you do at school that's actually about people. And it gives you perspective, and perspective and context are probably what's missing. When you see people arguing about politics or about, culture or anything else, history gives you tools to be able to, first of all, I think, be a little more tolerant and understanding. And second of all, to have the ability to not always judge, because you, as you said just now when I asked you about the future, you don't know.
You
have
know.
a little humility.
Yes, and I think the other thing that history teaches you is kind of empathy. I mean, there are people you may not like, but, history will teach you to have some sense of, you may not agree with them at all, but you must, you should end up through history with understanding them and understanding what those positions are, even though you disapprove of it, being able to just put yourself into someone else's shoes, to put it very bluntly.
Well, that's a very controversial thing to say these days, because we have a lot of revisionist historians. And I'd love to know your opinion on people pulling down statues, people rewriting history completely, people trying to make, and we've seen this in South African history. This has happened a number of times. We've gone through this cycle over and over again, and it seems that there are still a number of people in the world who are not content to learn any of history's lessons. Instead want to sanitize it in some cases, villainize it in other cases, make it up completely out of whole cloth in some other places. How do you feel about those people?
Well, I'm absolutely opposed to, pulling down statues. I mean, put up new statues, but don't pull down existing ones. And the new ones,
move the really onerous ones to less prominent
places or something. But, the point is that the new ones you put up may be shiny now, but who knows what they'll look like in 50 years' time. They may too have feet of clay, I mean, there's one view. Yeah, I mean, the Romans used to tear down statues all the time. It's probably not widely known, but they were constantly doing that, melting them down because they used the coin, so those statues they used as money. But I mean, I think that's very reprehensible. You can't erase and rewrite history in its warts and all. You've just got to face up to it.
And you also said that history teaches you empathy. Teaches you empathy, but it also, we need to be reminded of how awful people can be as well. And if we erase any of this history, for example, we decided that the apartheid era was so embarrassing that we needed to completely wipe it from the face of the earth, we would soon find that there would be people who would be coming up with as noxious ideas and trying to proffer them as something new because people had forgotten that that was already something we'd tried.
Yes.
And
Oh, no, of course.
not to be done again.
No, absolutely. You know, you invent a kind of fake amnesia about aspects of the past because you think the point is to feel good, you know, that history must make you feel good and feel positive and feel wholesome. And I don't think that's what history is. History is not that. It's not therapy. You know, if you want to do that, then have therapy. But don't do it. Don't do it through studying history.
Wow, I'm actually just so happy to be talking to someone about these things, which too often I'll find a friend of mine is particularly interested in maybe some part of history, but to talk about it with someone who's had the wide range of experiences and has read as much and understands as much about it as you do is real privilege. Bill, I also hear you're a massive fan of Peter Cook.
I am, yes. No, I'm a lifelong member of the Peter Cook Appreciation Society. Are you? I mean, I've always been a great
Peter Cook. Again, I don't know how many people will remember Peter Cook. Once a collaborator with Dudley Moore of all people.
Yes,
right?
That's right. Yes, the two of them. Yeah, yes. And a man of many wonderful sayings and sketches. I mean, one of his famous one of the sayings I love is Peter Cook saying, "The tragedy of my life is that I was an only twin." You know, nice actually. And then he does. I don't know if you remember the Jeremy Thorpe trial. You know, the Jeremy Thorpe case in 1971. The Liberal Party leader who was acquitted, astonishingly, in the court case, acquitted of conspiracy to murder. And then Peter Cook does a sort of comedy sketch where he's dressed up like the judge, and he says to the jury, "And now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you may retire to consider and deliberate over your verdict of not guilty." Etc. Yeah. Yes.
My very minimal exposure to him came in the form of a cameo he did in Blackadder alongside Rowan Atkinson, where he played King Richard III. And,
yes.
You know, he was dry and he was probably very, very drunk through the filming.
Yeah. Oh,
yes.
But
what an incredible, I mean, for someone to make that impression on you in about 5 minutes of screen time just shows you what a character.
It's astonishing, actually. I mean, it's terrible, the end of his life where he was, you know, an alcoholic beyond measure. But I mean, to the extent that people would hide the, if they had, mouthwash in bathrooms, they would hide it when Peter came around for dinner because he'd be dopping away, you know. It's really awful. But for me, the funniest man, actually, who ever lived.
Do you think about posterity, either your own or that of, you know, the great people who you've studied in your life, and try to figure out what it's all about? Because so often we compare the story of X person or Y person, very often because that person has been tremendously powerful, or they were just absolutely you know, downright evil and genocidal. The greatest names could be the builders of civilization, but they could equally be the ones who killed off civilizations. But do you think about posterity very much? And do you think that we've ever really come up with a good way of measuring whether someone has lived a valuable, productive life or not?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I think about posterity, I don't know. I think of Shane Warne, you know. I mean, if I were to think of an heroic figure for me, it would be somebody like Shane Warne, you know, the Australian classic Aussie sort of larrikin. Yeah, just because what he did, you know, what he did for whatever, you know, people who love cricket and sport. Yeah, I don't know. My own posterity, no. I mean, I always like that Spike Milligan thing about, you know, I think it's actually on his gravestone. Something like, you know, here lies Spike Milligan. And the inscription is C ? I told you I wasn't well.
That's terrific.
Which it may be apocryphal, but I've read somewhere that that's actually on his gravestone, which I think is terrific. Actually, I think
that's amazing.
That's the way I'd like to go. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we live in such a great time, and we should be very, very pleased with ourselves for being able to look back on some parts of our history now with a little bit more humor.
Yes.
Humor's important.
Exactly. I mean,
Humor's
humor is,
important, right?
for me, humor is so important. I mean, university lecturers, my English, I mean, in Britain, my university lecturers taught history through with lots and lots of humor, actually, constantly, pricking the pomposity of the great and the good. And that's what, I mean, that's no better way of communicating things and getting people to reflect a bit more critically on what they're looking at.
Well, congratulations on yet another book to add to a long list of your contributions to our own history. It's a great pleasure to spend time with you. I really appreciate you making time for me and for
Thank
our
you,
audience.
Gareth. Yeah, thank you.
And
Yeah.
please keep up the good work, and let's keep kids interested in history, and let's keep making history interesting to kids, because God knows we're lost without it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, sure.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Thanks, Gareth. That's been really great. Thanks so much for having me on your show. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate your time.